चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणम्। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. In this post of Sravanam-Smaranam, we are continuing to talk about Mahajanas of Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 3rd chapter, 20th and 21st shlokas. So last two posts we have covered about Brahma and Shiva. Today we will cover about Narada. So before we go to discuss about Narada, we will again chant that shloka from Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 3rd chapter, 20th and 21st shlokas. Swayambhu Narada Shambho Kumara Kapilo Manu Prahlado Janako Bhishmo Balitvaya Sakhirvayam Dvadisheti Vijabinimo Dharmam Bhagavatam Bhataha Guhyam Vishuddham Durbodham Yam Jnatvamrutam. So here the context is Ajamila Charitra. So after Ajamila is taken to Vishnaloka, Yamadutas actually who went there to get into Yamaloka could not succeed because Ajamila was chanting the name of the Lord when he was passing away. And so Yamadutas messengers come and discuss the philosophy behind that with Yamaraja, and Yamaraja among his instructions is one of these instructions which he talks about 12 Mahajanas whose footsteps we should follow, or we should follow the footsteps of those Mahajanas who have followed these Mahajanas in the Parampara system. So in this context we have today another exalted great Mahajana, Narada. Narada is basically a great devotee. We all know about Narada. The moment we hear about Narada, we remember that Narada is one great devotee who has access to all the parts of the cosmic universe. He is always in touch with Lord. He is always in the mood of devotion. He is always in the mood of chanting and glorifying the names of the Lord. Always traveling and always helping people to come to devotional path. And apart from that, he is also called as Devarshi. That means he is Rishi, is sage. Devarshi, he is sage among the gods. So we can imagine his exalted position. And in all the great epic movements which are documented in the Srimad Bhagavatam or in several of the Smritis, Narada's presence is always there. I will just take few very big significant situations. Narada was also one of the instrumental personalities in transforming a hunter called by name Valmiki to a great sage, and also inspired him to compile a Ramayana. We all know that story. And Narada also was very much instrumental in meeting Vyasadeva and encouraging him, motivating him, and actually compelling him to write and compile Srimad Bhagavatam. When Vyasadeva, after having written so many Puranas, Upanishads, compiling the Vedas, still he was not very satisfied, and he was not able to know the reason for his dissatisfaction. In all the things which he has written previously, has basically covered four things: Dharma, Artha, Moksha, Kama. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma is religiosity, Artha is economic development, Dharma, Artha, Kama is how to fulfill the desires, and then moksha is liberation. So Narada, Devarshi Narada approached Vyasadeva and engaged in a very nice philosophical dialogue with him and brought out the root cause of his dissatisfaction to tell him to the fact that he has not written a scripture which is entirely devoted to pure devotional service, which is beyond dharma, artha, kama, moksha, which elevates a person to pure devotion, and it transcends a person from all these four normally talked about things in the Puranas and other itihasas. So in that way, Narada played a very significant role to tell Vyasadeva on what he should do to satisfy himself and to basically meet the purpose for which Vyasadeva has come also. So by taking the instructions of Narada, Vyasadeva has compiled this fantastic Purana called Bhagavata, which talks about the several pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, predominantly centered around Lord Sri Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, and other part of Bhagavatam talks about these stories of the great devotees, and that's why we have Prahlad Charitra, Dhruva Charitra, Gajendra Moksha, and so many of them, and each wonderfully gives us so much of details about pure devotional service. So in the four, that way Narada is always remembered as a great devotee. Wherever he goes, the outcome is that person or the people surrounding him progress towards more into devotional service. So in that way we should bow down, we should pray to Narad so that we can also move forward in devotion service, because Narad is such a personality that he meets anyone of any type, any caste, any creed, any position of this in the society, and meets him and then transforms him to a great devotee. So Narada, apart from always chanting the holy names of the Lord, because he is a great devotee, when it came to talk about the definition, a scientific and a rational analysis of what is bhakti per se, obviously the best person to be approached is Narada. Vyasadeva has compiled Bhagavat, which is known as Amala Purana. It is known to show us the path of devotional service, but to define what is devotion is what we need to know, and for this reason Narada has compiled Narada Bhakti Sutras. Sutra means a very detailed instruction, but put it into a very capsule form. So most of the sutras in Narada Bhakti Sutras are just 1 line and half a line thing. There are few exceptions to those. So in Narada Bhakti Sutras there are about 80 plus sutras. According to my memory, it's about 84. And ISKCON founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada has wonderfully translated those Narada Bhakti Sutras, and it's available in the form of a book. And the evolution of that Narada Bhakti Sutra is also very nice. It is not that just Narada expressed his opinions about what is devotion, but the story goes that he has basically initially compiled what is devotion from so many great rishis, so many great personalities, and clubbed them and given his own opinion and his own knowledge into this Narada Bhakti Sutras. So today we will cover one of such a sutra, which is slightly an exception to the normal sutras, which are very brief. So along with my email post of the YouTube link, I will also attach one document, a PDF document, which gives the complete all the Narada Bhakti Sutras. So this sutra is an exception because it's slightly longer. It basically talks about the devotion service and how they can manifest in us when we move forward in our devotional service. Because each one of us are an individual, each one is an individual soul. We have our own conditioning of different modes of nature, mode of goodness, mode of ignorance, mode of passion, And also our own characteristic of a personality is different. Each person is pretty unique. And so how they relate with Supreme Personality of the Godhead can also be different. So Narada basically says, although devotion service is one, it becomes manifested in 11 forms of attachment, asakti. So this Narada Bhakti Sutra 82 has a word which keeps on repeating called asakti. Asakti is attachment. In a way, attachment can also be synonymously used with love, because love, if you don't have love, you don't have attachment. If you don't have attachment, you don't have love. But asakti is slightly a higher degree of love where you are completely immersed and completely connected. So there are 11 things. First is, one can have 2 or 3 manifestations, or one can have only one manifestation of devotion service. But basically, for our understanding of devotion, he has told that there are 11 forms of attachment that can be manifested in devotees. One is to his glorious qualities, to his beauty, to worshipping him, to remembering him, to serving him, to reciprocating him as a friend, to care him as a parent, to deal with him as a lover, to surrender oneself to him, to being absorbed in thought of him, to experiencing separation from him. So these are the 11 manifestations of a devotion or a devotional service among the devotees. So one can be attached, or one can be interested in one or two or many of them. But in general, we see some people, great personalities, get attached to one or two particular of that, and they become exemplified for that. For example, to be reciprocating with him as friend means we immediately remember Arjuna. To caring him as a parent, we remember Yashoda. Dealing him with as a lover, of course, Srimati Radharani. To surrender oneself to him, surrender is Hanuman, or Hanuman is in Dasya, Vibhishan is one example. And to being absorbed always in thought of him, we can think of Narada, we can think of so many other people who are always absorbed in thinking about him. To his glorious qualities, there are other devotees who always chant his glories. So like that, we can see those devotees, and once we see their experiences, their behavior, we can relate to them that this is that asakti, this is the nature, this is the type of asakti in which they are quite dominant in their behavior and characteristic. For example, the 11th one is to experience separation from him. This is the devotional attribute which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has displayed predominantly, that he was always in the mood of separation, and he was telling the devotees, demonstrating to the devotees around him that how powerful it could be, that to feel that we are disconnected from the Lord, and we always are eager to get connected, and feeling always that our life is void without Lord being present in front of us. So like this, Narada has given a wonderful knowledge, what is known as the nuts and bolts of devotion in Narada Bhakti Sutra. So in that way again, we should bow down to Narada, worship him, always remember his glories, always try to follow his footsteps so that we can be closer to Lord. And Narada, apart from Bhakti Sutras, he has also compiled what is known as Narada Pancharatra. In the Narada Pancharatra also we get wonderful details about devotion. One very famous shloka is what I wanted to share with you, and this is the shloka which ISKCON Samstapakacharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada often quoted when he has to talk about devotion, particularly when he has to talk about the definition of bhakti, definition of devotion, or definition of devotional service, or definition of bhakti. The shloka goes like this: Sarvopadhi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. sarvopadhi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. The meaning is that the important message is that rishikena rishikesha. Rishikesha means another name of the Lord, which is called master of the senses. He is the master of all the senses. So if we engage Rishikesha, our senses, if we engage our senses to the master of the senses, then that becomes devotional service. And if we engage our senses to our sense gratification, our bodily sense gratification, which we normally do in this material life, which we are more concerned about our body, its well-being, its health, whatever things we don't dovetail those activities to the service of the Lord, and that becomes illusion or Maya. And this is a similar thing that at a deeper philosophical and higher philosophical level, which also comes in the second shloka of Chaturshloki Srimad Bhagavatam, which we have covered, where Krishna says, anything that is not in relationship with me is like a reflection in dark. Vithayartam yat pratiyeta, nat pratiyeta chatmani. So that shloka we also covered in one of the posts. So in the Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam Tat Paratvena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate means this is what is known as devotion, or this is what is known as the pure devotional service. This is a definition of the pure devotional service. What is it? To engage our services to the master of the senses. So devotion, service to the Supreme Lord means engagement of all our senses in the service. And in such service, there are two important features. First one, Sarvopadhi Vinirmuktam. This is easy to say, very difficult to practice in our material life. Sarvopadhi, Upadhi means designations, Sarva means all designation, Vinirmuktam, to give away, to get detached from all the designations. This could be material designations. Typically, I am a doctor, I am an engineer, I am that, I am this, which is without which we almost cannot function in this material world. But at least internally, in our consciousness, we should know that we are nothing of those, because once our body gets finished, when we die, all those upadhis will go away. So only upadhi, only designation that gets carried life after life, in any form of life that we have, is that we are the servants of the Lord. So servant upadhi, servant designation, that I am the servant of the Lord, I am Krishna's and Krishna is mine, that upadhi is the one which carries us forever. But all the other upadhis are very temporary and they are limited to this life. But having said that, it's very easy to say this important thing, that Sarva Upadhi Vinirmuktam. But once we know this definition of bhakti, so even when we out in an external world we say that I am this or I am that, internally, consciously and subconsciously, we will be aware that I am only telling this because I have to deal this I have to deal the materialistic activities in a materialistic way externally, but not getting attached. If we get too much attached to these upadhis, that will become a big hindrance for our devotional service. So when we take up to devotional service, we should remember that we are the servant of the Lord, but not that I am an engineer, I am a rich man, I have got this, I have got this. We should slowly try to get away from that. Again I say, even though when we say it externally, for whatever reason, subconsciously we should be aware that this is not correct. So there are two important aspects. First one must be, we should be purified from all designations, or we should get rid of those designations. Purified is again dovetailing of whatever we have, whatever we do, whatever activities that we perform. If we perform towards the Lord, and then the Sarvopadi issue cannot come to us. And second is that our senses has to be utilized for the master of the senses. Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam Tat Paratvena Nirmalam. Nirmala means something connected with purity. So our upadhis have to be purified, and we should be mukti from our designations. So this is what Narada has given us in the beautiful form in the Narada Pancharatra shlokas, and this is one shloka which Srila Prabhupada is very often quoted in order to define bhakti. So we bow down to that Mahajan, Swayambhur Narada Shambho. Narada who has given this wonderful shloka, Sarvopadhi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam shikena shikesha sevanam bhaktiruchite. So when Narada met Vyasadeva, and history of Narada in Srimad Bhagavatam comes in the very beginning because he was one of those important personalities who has actually inspired Vyasadeva to compile Srimad Bhagavatam. So his story comes in Srimad Bhagavatam in the very early chapters itself. In the first canto, 4th, 5th, 6th, we get a very vivid description about Narada and Vyasadeva's discussions, and this is subject matter also of their discussions on how Vyasadeva felt dissatisfied, how Narada inspired him, is a subject matter of discussion and elaboration by so many great acharyas, which they thought was a very important subject matter that has to be read by everybody. And while telling, after convincing Vyasadeva on to compile Amala Purana like Srimad Bhagavata, Narada also tells his story in brief, which is also very important. His story of his previous life. Narada, we see him as we know him as a very great devotee who has a direct access to the Supreme Lord. In fact, was a maid servant in his previous birth, in his previous millennium birth, and he was a son of a very poor maid servant. And somehow or other, by his great fortune, when the place where they were staying, in a small place, the rishis came, and it was Chaturmasya, and so rishis, sages, great sages, self-realized personalities stayed there, and Narada, being a young boy, all that he did was to do some service, physical service to them, and ate remnants of their food that was offered to God and which rishis were taking, and that had actually purified him, and he had also got knowledge about those sages. And after that, by the will of the Lord, he had mother and no father, and his mother passes away by the snake bite. And Narada, in fact, at that time feels that it's a blessing of the Lord, and then he walks away from home and he does a meditation, and Lord appears before him, and then he gives him an instruction and he disappears, also telling that he will not give darshan to anybody who has got even the faintest of the material attachment, and then he blesses him, saying that in his next life what he will be. So Narada's story is very important on how he meditated and how he visualized the Lord and what he felt when he practically seen the Lord, and how bad he felt when Lord disappeared from his presence. And it's very interesting thing that one can read in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 4th, 5th, 6th chapters of wonderful shlokas, beautiful purports by ISKCON Samstapakacharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. And that's why Narada is always there in many places in Srimad Bhagavatam. He is there in Dhruva Charitra, he is telling Dhruva how Lord Vishnu will look like when Dhruva is about to meditate. He is there he has got a very significant role to play in Prahlad Charitra. So many places we keep seeing Narada, and every time when Narada appears there, there is always a lesson to be learned, particularly with respect to getting connected with Lord and with respect to bhakti. So in that mood of devotion, in that mood of great gratitude and submission to the philosophy that Narada has given us, we'll just chant this Narada Pancharatra Shloka once again. Sarvopadhi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I would like to extend this session by a few more minutes. I'll take a bit of a liberty to tell one small realization of mine. I basically come from South India, a state known as Andhra Pradesh, and which was very popular in the film industry when we were ranked for the great social pictures and pictures which related to our philosophy and great stories of Ramayana, Mahabharata and Bhagavad. There have been many great actors, great poets who have penned that. But unfortunately, I do not know why it happened. Somehow, as the days went by, the depiction of Narada's character was always shown as the one who creates problems and whose very characterization is given in a form of a humorous touch. And my knowledge of Narada was also like that till I came in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam and till I came in touch with the devotees of International Society of Krishna Consciousness and acharyas, the spiritual leaders, spiritual teachers with whose lectures I heard, and whole of my impression of Narada has changed. And I felt very sorry that throughout life, till that point I came to know who is Narada, who actually is Narada. I was always thinking him as a comical character and who always creates problems and there are funny situations. I'm not sure why it happened, when it happened in the history of the movies. My father was also a very well-known stage artist. He had a very great interest in dramas, radio and stage dramas, apart from his normal office work. So he used to take us to many dramas which were held in a very famous place called Ravindra Bharat in Hyderabad. There were a lot of talented actors, and in those days, in early 60s, when I was an young kid, even in those days where there was no commercialization of any sort, when in those days where there's a lot of prominence was given for genuinity, I still remember to have seen dramas on stage where Narada was shown as some kind of a humorous character. I do not know if my father were alive as of today, I could have definitely asked him why it happened like that. But later, yes, it became worse. So my only humble submission is that if you have such feeling, please remove it. Please remove it. It's actually, in fact, kind of a sinful to think about Narada like that, such a great and exalted devotee who has given us such a great knowledge, who is instrumental for us to get Ramayana, who is instrumental for us to get Srimad Bhagavatam. So we need to know him in a proper perspective, and it also becomes our prime duty to tell our kids two things: who is Narada and what is his greatness. Open the books of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 4th, 5th, 6th chapter to start with, and also not to rely completely on TVs or movies for getting the spiritual knowledge. If we want to get an authentic spiritual knowledge about Bhagavad Gita, about Ramayana, about Srimad Bhagavatam, we should open the Mool Granth and then we should read. Otherwise we will get caught up in these commercialized, unauthenticated, unauthorized stories which are mainly meant for entertainment, and our kids, our younger generation people will be completely misled. So while I'm talking with Narada, I'm sorry that I've just taken a bit of liberty to kind of in a preaching mode than in a sharing mode, because this has been my realization. If I were not to be getting in touch with people who knew about Narada, who has revealed that to me, I would have been in a very wrong assumption about assumption and understanding of who Narada is. So in that humble request, humble begging petition, I request you to do what you are supposed to do. If you already know it, it's fine. Think that it's a revision. If you have learned something new in this, kindly share it with others, particularly the younger generation of people, to remember Narada in that very important devotional mood in which he used to always chant the names of Narayana, and he was always connected to the Lord, and he has always told us what is exactly is the Bhakti Yoga process. So one more time we will repeat the shloka of Narada Pancharatra. Sarvopadhi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama